In 2025, every ocean beach in the United States, the Atlantic, the Pacific, the Gulf of Mexico, combined for a total of 23 fatal drownings. That same year, a single freshwater lake in the Midwest killed 36. Lake Michigan has no sharks, no tides, and no currents pulling swimmers toward a distant open ocean. The waves rarely top 6 feet, but since 2010, the Great Lakes have quietly drowned more than 1,400 people, a toll that routinely outpaces every saltwater coastline in the country. So what is it about this water that systematically overpowers the people who enter it, and why are the strongest swimmers dying first? The Great Lakes hold roughly 1/5 of all the surface freshwater on Earth. Lake Michigan alone has more public beach coastline than the entire eastern seaboard. But the word lake is doing serious damage here. When people hear lake, they picture something contained, calm water, a visible far shore, maybe a rope swing off a dock. The Great Lakes are none of that. They are inland seas, hundreds of miles of open water capable of generating 10-foot waves, sudden 20-degree temperature plunges, and currents strong enough to overpower an Olympic swimmer. The horizon is a flat, unbroken line of water in every direction, identical to the view from any beach in Florida. But because the sign says lake, visitors arrive with the wrong mental model entirely. And they arrive by the millions. Indiana Dunes National Park drew 2.7 million visitors in 2024. Warren Dunes State Park in Michigan pulls roughly 1 million a year, and 92% of them come from out of state, mostly landlocked suburbs in Indiana and Illinois. They drive through hours of cornfields, park in a paved lot, walk past a concession stand, and step onto sand that's white and soft beneath water that glows Caribbean turquoise. The piers are capped with red lighthouses. The boardwalks are groomed and polished. Nothing about it signals danger. No salt stinging the eyes, no tidal chart at the entrance, no fin cutting the surface. The brain registers all of it and settles on a single conclusion: managed, commercial, safe. An estimated 99% of Michigan's public beaches have no lifeguards, and the reason has almost nothing to do with money. The first thing working against a swimmer in the Great Lakes is the chemistry of the water, and it operates on 2 levels. The surface level problem is buoyancy. Salt water is dense with dissolved minerals, and that density pushes the human body upward, providing a passive cushion that makes treading water considerably easier. Freshwater doesn't do that. In the Great Lakes, a swimmer sits measurably lower in the water column and has to work harder, burn more oxygen, fire more muscle, just to keep their airway above the surface. But the deeper problem is what happens when that fresh water enters the lungs. And this is where drowning in the Great Lakes diverges from everything most people assume. When a swimmer aspirates salt water, the high salt concentration draws fluid from the bloodstream into the lungs. The lungs flood with plasma. Breathing becomes impossible, but the heart can continue beating for up to 12 minutes, leaving a narrow window for rescue. Freshwater does the opposite. When it enters the lungs, it doesn't stay there. Because it's far less concentrated than human blood, the water passes straight through the thin walls of the air sacs and floods directly into the bloodstream. Red blood cells absorb the excess fluid, swell beyond capacity, and rupture, millions of them, in seconds. As they burst, they dump potassium into the blood. That potassium surge poisons the electrical system of the heart, sending it from a steady rhythm into chaotic, useless twitching and then full cardiac arrest. From aspiration to cardiac arrest, 2 to 4 minutes, not the 12 you'd get in salt water. In freshwater, by the time anyone on shore realizes a swimmer is struggling, the blood chemistry has already shut the heart down, which means everything that follows, the waves, the currents, the cold, isn't just about whether a swimmer can stay afloat. It's about whether they can keep a single mouthful of this water out of their lungs. On the hottest days of summer, when the air pushes past 90 degrees and the beach is at peak capacity, prevailing offshore winds can shove the sun-warmed surface layer of the lake away from shore. What rises to replace it is water drawn from the deep thermal layers, water that hasn't seen sunlight in months. Within 48 hours, nearshore temperatures can drop from the mid-70s to the low 50s, the thermal equivalent of stepping out of a hot shower into an ice bath. When a human body hits water below 60 degrees, hypothermia isn't the immediate danger. That takes 30 minutes to an hour. What fires first is the cold shock response, a violent neurological reflex that activates in the first 3 seconds of immersion. The diaphragm seizes. The body gasps sharply and involuntarily. If the swimmer's head is above the surface, they inhale air. If a wave has just broken over them, they inhale up to 3 liters of lake water, roughly the volume of a large soda bottle, straight into the lungs. And in freshwater, that aspiration starts a cardiac clock that gives them minutes, not hours. On June 27, 2022, Thomas Kenning, a 38-year-old environmental teacher from St. Petersburg, Florida, was walking Porter Beach at Indiana Dunes with his family. He wasn't there to swim. He'd walked to that specific stretch of sand to show his 9-year-old daughter the exact spot where he had proposed to his wife. Then he spotted a 16-year-old girl struggling in a rip current 60 feet from shore. Kenning went in after her, reached the girl, and extended his hand. Before they could connect, a wave broke over his head. The cold water and the exertion overwhelmed him within seconds. Lifeguards eventually arrived and saved the girl. Kenning's body was recovered 15 minutes later. The beach had no lifeguards stationed on it. The ones who saved the girl had to be dispatched from a neighboring state park. Kenning was posthumously awarded the Carnegie Medal for heroism. Everything covered so far, the buoyancy deficit, the freshwater physiology, the cold shock, accounts for only a fraction of the total death toll here. The rest traces back to a single mechanism that most swimmers have never thought to worry about. If this is the kind of investigation you want showing up in your feed, subscribing takes a second and means the next one finds you automatically. The mechanism that kills more people in the Great Lakes than anything else is the wave period. When storms generate waves in the open ocean, those swells travel thousands of miles before reaching the beach. By the time they arrive, they've organized into clean, rolling lines that hit the shore roughly every 10 to 12 seconds. A swimmer knocked underwater by an ocean wave has a full 10 seconds to surface, clear their eyes, fill their lungs, and brace for the next one. 10 seconds doesn't sound generous, but it's enough. It's survivable. The Great Lakes don't work that way. Because the wind only has a couple hundred miles of open water to act on, the distance known as fetch, the waves never organize. They stay steep, chaotic, and stacked directly on top of each other. The average wave period on Lake Michigan is 3 to 4 seconds. Take a breath and count to 3. That is the entire recovery window. Before a swimmer has finished exhaling, the next wall of water is already in their face, and then another one 3 seconds after that. A swimmer caught in these conditions for just 15 minutes will be struck by roughly 225 consecutive waves, a relentless, compounding battering that leaves no time to breathe, no time to orient, and no time to recover. 80% of all drownings and rescues on the Great Lakes happen in waves measuring just 3 to 6 feet, not towering storm surges. Waves that look from the beach entirely manageable. The height isn't what kills, it's the tempo. And it does something very specific to the human body. As the rapid-fire wave sets keep hammering a swimmer, the muscles start burning through oxygen faster than the lungs can replace it. Fatigue sets in exponentially faster than it would in the ocean or a pool. The swimmer's posture shifts from horizontal to vertical, arms pressing down, head tilted back, mouth sitting perfectly level with the choppy surface. This is the instinctive drowning response, and it is almost entirely silent. The victim can't call for help because their respiratory system is fully occupied trying to find oxygen before the next crest arrives. They can drown in a crowded swimming area, surrounded by waders just yards away without anyone noticing. One rescue official described it as searching for a moving needle in a moving haystack. And then there are the piers. Hundreds of concrete breakwalls and navigational piers line the Great Lakes shoreline, jutting hundreds of yards into the open water. To a visitor, they look like sidewalks, stable, solid, built for strolling. Families walk out to the lighthouse for photos, and teenagers jump off the edges into the water below. Struggling swimmers instinctively head for them because a solid wall looks like something to grab onto, which is the problem. When waves approach the shore at an angle, they push massive volumes of water along the beach in what's called a longshore current. When that moving water hits a solid concrete pier, it can't pass through. These aren't ocean piers built on stilts. They're solid walls of concrete and stone, flush to the lake bed, engineered to block ice. So the water deflects, funnels along the face of the pier, and rockets directly out into the open lake, forming a structural current that routinely exceeds 5 miles per hour. Michael Phelps, at his absolute peak, in a controlled Olympic pool, swam roughly 4.5, and the current is only half of what's happening at the pier. Incoming waves crash against the concrete and bounce backward, directly into the next set of arriving swells. The collision creates a churning, aerated chaos that rescue professionals call the washing machine. The water in this zone becomes so saturated with air that it loses density. It feels thin and useless under the swimmer's hands. They can't get purchase. They can't push themselves upward. They sink while actively swimming. 19-year-old Emily McDonald and her 22-year-old boyfriend, Corey Ernster, visited South Beach in South Haven, Michigan. Both were strong, athletic swimmers. A yellow flag was flying on the beach, which visitors interpret the same way they'd read a yellow traffic light. Proceed with caution. They went in for a swim near the navigational pier. A structural current caught them, swept them into the washing machine, and pulled them under. Bystanders dragged both of them from the water and started CPR on the sand. Neither regained consciousness. It was the last day of a long family vacation. One final swim before heading back to school. Emily's mother was out running errands when she received the call. After the McDonald and Ernster drownings, the question was immediate. Why was there no lifeguard on that beach? The answer is a piece of Michigan state law called the Governmental Tort Liability Act. Under this statute, a municipality is broadly immune from lawsuits when carrying out a governmental function, unless it's operating something primarily for profit. And here is where the incentive structure inverts entirely. If a city employs lifeguards and a lifeguard makes a mistake, misjudges a current, arrives 3 seconds too late, the city can be sued for negligence. But if the city provides nothing, no lifeguards, no rescue boards, just a metal sign reading, "Swim at your own risk," the beach is legally classified as unmanaged nature, and the city is shielded by absolute governmental immunity. South Haven fired its lifeguards in 2001. Over the next 25 years, 12 people drowned on its beaches. The legal framework was tested directly after 18-year-old Brandon Chambers drowned at South Beach in September 2020, caught in a structural current under yellow flags. He managed to grab a plastic swim area buoy roughly 100 yards from shore, about the length of a football field. A police sergeant entered the water to try to reach him and nearly drowned himself. Chambers held on, watching the rescuers struggle toward him, until his body gave out in the chop. He slipped beneath the surface. His body was recovered days later by a pedestrian walking on the pier. His family sued the city. The city's defense was straightforward. They don't charge people to enter the water, only a fee to park a car on city asphalt. The beach isn't operated for profit. In 2025, the Michigan Court of Appeals agreed and cleared the city of all liability. The message to every coastal municipality on the Great Lakes was plain. The safest legal strategy is to provide no safety at all. It took that ruling, the McDonald and Ernster drownings, and years of sustained pressure from advocacy groups before South Haven reversed course. In May 2026, the city reinstated lifeguards for the first time in a quarter century, funding the $800,000 program by raising the very parking fees that had legally insulated them from responsibility. 2 weeks after the guards started, Jeff Philbrandt, an Ironman triathlete and the husband of South Haven's mayor, finished a training swim in the lake and walked up to the newly installed lifeguard stand. He smiled at the guards and said, "Looks like you're going to have a slow morning." Then he collapsed in sudden cardiac arrest. The lifeguards initiated CPR within seconds and shocked his heart back with a defibrillator before paramedics arrived. He survived. Medical personnel later confirmed that without the immediate response, he would have died. 25 years without lifeguards, $800,000 to bring them back. And within 14 days, they saved a life. The USLA puts the chance of drowning at a guarded beach at 1 in 18 million. The Great Lakes don't have a physics problem that can't be managed. They have an infrastructure gap that took decades of drownings and one legal loophole to even begin closing. Most of the coastline still hasn't. The standard advice for ocean rip currents, swim parallel to shore, can be actively dangerous in the Great Lakes. Longshore currents already run parallel to the beach, and structural currents run parallel to the pier. Swimming sideways can drive a victim directly into a concrete wall or deeper into the fastest part of the current. The Great Lakes Surf Rescue Project developed a protocol specifically for freshwater. It's called Flip, Float, and Follow. The moment you feel yourself losing control, flip onto your back. This gets your face out of the water and stops the aspiration that triggers cardiac arrest in freshwater. Then float. Don't kick, don't stroke. Floating keeps the airway clear, slows the heart rate, and conserves the muscular energy that the wave period is systematically draining. The core principle is simple. As long as you are floating, you are alive and buying time for rescue. Then follow. Assess where the current is taking you. Don't fight it, and once it weakens, swim perpendicular to the flow. If you're too exhausted, keep floating and signal for help. Stay away from the pier. Regardless of how calm the water looks near it, regardless of how solid and climbable the concrete feels, the base of that structure is the epicenter of the most violent current on the beach. It is not a wall to hold on to. It is a machine engineered to move water out of a harbor, and it will move you with it. And a yellow flag on the Great Lakes does not mean what most people think it means. It is not a yellow traffic light. It is not telling you to proceed with caution. It is telling you the water is actively hazardous. And in all likelihood, it was posted by someone who is not a lifeguard and will not be coming in after you. Dave Benjamin, Co-founder of the Great Lakes Surf Rescue Project, a man who nearly drowned in Lake Michigan himself and spent 40 minutes fighting his way back to shore, says it plainly: knowing how to swim is not water safety. That might be the most important thing to understand about these lakes, because every year, the people who drown here are not the ones who can't swim. They're the ones who were absolutely certain they could.